Hi again, friends. I have another story. The title is The Best Nest. And the author and the illustrator is P.D. Eastman. He's one of my favorite authors. I know you've seen lots of birds outside while you've been home. And actually, I found a little tiny nest in my yard that was made by some birds. Here's the title page, The Best Nest, written and illustrated by P.D. Eastman. Mr. Bird was happy. He was so happy he had to sing. This was Mr. Bird's song. I love my house. I love my nest. In all the world, my nest is best. Then Mrs. Bird came out of the house. It's not the best nest, she said. I'm tired of this old place, said Mrs. Bird. I hate it. Let's look for a new place right now. Mr. Bird looks pretty surprised. A little bit jumpy there. So they left the old place to look for a new one. This place looks nice, said Mr. Bird. Let's move in here. But somebody else had already moved in. Mr. Raccoon. So they went to look at another house. This one looks nice, said Mr. Bird, and there's nobody in it. Look at it, guys. You're wrong, said Mrs. Bird. This house belongs to a foot. It's pretty silly. So they went on looking. I like this one, said Mr. Bird. It has a pretty red flag on the roof. What is that really, friends? Something that everybody has. I know you know what it is. I've always wanted a house with a flag, said Mrs. Bird. Maybe this place will be all right. Who's coming? But it was not all right. Oh, I guess I made a mistake, said Mr. Bird. You make too many mistakes, said Mrs. Bird. I'm going to pick the next house. And here it is, right here. They flew in. They looked around. Isn't it too big? Asked Mr. Bird. I like this big place, said Mrs. Bird. This is the place to build our new nest. You all know what that thing is. So they went right to work. They needed many things to build their nest. First, they got some hay. They got some soda straws. She looks pretty surprised. Oh my goodness. And some broom straws. And they even got some sweater string. They were using all sorts of things, weren't they? They got some stocking string and even some mattress stuffing. Look at that, friends. They got some horsehair. Does that horse look very happy about it? I don't think so. And they even got some man hair, and he just sat right there. Oh my goodness. I think that might hurt. Soon they had all the hay, all the straw, all the string, all the stuffing, all the horsehair, and all the man hair they could carry. They took it back to build their nest. I see the straw. Can you see the straw? Mr. and Mrs. Bird worked very hard. It took them the rest of the morning to finish their nest. This nest is really the best, said Mrs. Bird. I want to stay here forever. Mr. Bird was very happy too. He flew to the top of his house and he sang his song again. I love our house. I love our nest. In all the world, our nest is best. He was so busy singing that he didn't even see Mr. Parker coming. I wonder what Mr. Parker is going to do. Every day at 12 o'clock, Mr. Parker came to the church. Mr. Parker came to pull a rope, and the rope went up to the bird's new nest. Now this rope rang the big bell right under Mrs. Bird's best nest. Boing, boing, boing. Mrs. Bird got out of there as far as she could fly. And the bell kept ringing. Boing, bong, bong, bong. When Mr. Bird came in, all he could see was a mess of hay and string and stuffing and horsehair and man hair and straws. Where was Mrs. Bird? Where had she gone, my friends? "I will look for her until I find her," said Mr. Bird. He looked up high and he looked down low. He looked everywhere in town for Mrs. Bird. He looked down into a chimney, but Mrs. Bird wasn't there. I wonder if he's starting to miss her. He went to the barn and he looked down into a water barrel, but Mrs. Bird wasn't there either. Then he saw a big, fat cat. There was a big, fat smile on the fat cat's face. There were some pretty brown feathers near the fat cat's mouth. Mr. Bird began to cry. I wonder what he's thinking, friends. Oh dear, he cried. That big fat cat has eaten Mrs. Bird. With tears streaming out of his eyes, Mr. Bird flew off. I'll never see Mrs. Bird again. It was getting dark. It began to rain. It rained harder and harder and harder. Mr. Bird could not see where he was going. It was a big storm. All of a sudden, crash! Mr. Bird bumped into something. It was his old house. That old house that Mrs. Bird just hated. I'll go inside, said Mr. Bird. I'll rest here until the rain stops. Mr. Bird went in, and there was Mrs. Bird. She was sitting there, singing, I love my house, I love my nest, in all the world, this nest is best. You here, gasped Mr. Bird. I thought you hated this old nest. I've been looking for you. Mrs. Bird smiled. I used to hate it, she said, but a mother bird can change her mind. You see, there's no nest like an old nest for a brand new bird. What a beautiful blue egg. And when the egg popped open, the new bird thought so too. He loved the best nest. The end, friends.